Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking Justice League. Before I do, I just have a piece of scripture for you guys. I've been reading extensively on Justice League this morning. It comes from Matthew chapter 9. And it says, "Behold, a woman which was diseased with an issue of blood 12 years came behind Jesus and touched the hem of his garment. She said within herself, 'If I could just touch his garment, I will be whole.' And Jesus turned about him, and when he saw her, he said, 'Daughter, be of good comfort. Your faith has made you whole.' And the woman was whole from that hour." Now, as short as that is, there's much more to that story than meets the eye, but I want you to understand a couple things. No matter what your current status is, and it could be really, really bad for you, I want you to understand that it is not impossible for that status to change. I'll go as far as to say, because I was talking to one of my subscribers, I'll go as far as to say there's nothing impossible in this life, period. Whatever you visualize in your mind, as ridiculous as it sounds, is possible. I'm going to go to the ultimate thing that many people think is the finale. It's the end. And we've heard many stories about this, but I'm going to go to death. Now, most people believe that death, I don't care if you're religious or you're not, that death is the end of all things. After you die, it's over. Mainly because we don't know what it is to die. Well, we kind of do, but we don't really know what it is to die. I'm saying this because I'm going to relate to it metaphorically, and I'm also going to relate to it literally. Can any of you visualize somebody coming back from the dead? No, not as a zombie, but literally coming back from the dead and walking among you and talking as if they never had been dead. Now, I'm sure some of you have stories of people who flatlined in the hospital and were revived. But I'm talking about being dead for days, years, months, decades, millennia, and coming back from that. That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about you're dead and they burnt you in your ashes. I'm talking about you dead and you're vaporized. I'm talking about you dead and you decayed and there's not a trace of you anymore. No bone structure, nothing. That's what I'm talking about. So I want to share this with you guys because I want you to understand that when the scripture said nothing is impossible with God, love can bring back the dead. Now, metaphorically, that can happen. We've seen people who have had horrible situations and supposedly hopelessness, and love brought them back. The Justice League is about to highlight that. I never underestimate what Zack Synder is saying in his movies. And Patty Jenkins had a point in her movie. David Ayer had a point in his movie. Zack Synder has had his point in his movies. I'm pretty sure James Wan will have a point in his movie. These are not directors who direct just as observers. They're not passive. They're active. There is always a point to what they are doing. And that's important because as I read scripture, as you watch a superhero movie, think about it this way. There is Apocalypse and New Genesis. Both terms are Greek. But very importantly, the first book of the Bible, the very first book of the Bible is Genesis. The very last book of the Bible is known as the Apocalypta or Revelation. In Greek, it's known as the Apocalypta. Okay? I'm trying to show you how similar these things are, how biblical they are. They're built on what we call, if you were to use a Masonic symbol, the cornerstone. Also, a term that's biblical. It talks about the root foundation. Okay? Why I say all of these things is not because I'm a Freemason. I'm not a Freemason. I'm not a Mason at all. Okay? But that doesn't mean that some Masons aren't believers. And that's just, you see, if you try to put everything in a box, and God doesn't want us to do that. He wants us to look at the spirit of the thing. If you try to put everything in a box, you're going to get in trouble. Because life isn't like that. It's a mosaic, and it's a meld into different things. Okay? But you know when something is right. And you know when something is wrong. It's easy. If something is wrong, it will hurt a lot of people. No matter if you think it's just hurting you. No, it always translates onto somebody else. Because it will affect your attitude, and your attitude will affect other people. So something that hurts other people obviously is bad. Something that helps a lot of people, obviously it's good. And this is where the term good and bad come from. And I don't care if you are one of those people who don't believe there's something called good and something called bad. You're going to end up having to speak about things which help or hinder someone. And at some point, you're going to have to come back and confront those terms. Yes, they're more Western terms. The Eastern way is positivity and negativity and so on. I know. But I'm saying anyway, if you want to get into semantics, that's a whole other story. We're trying to be real here. And so I read that scripture because, again, I wanted to talk a little bit about the supernatural for a minute. Things that don't necessarily happen every day because people don't believe it's possible. And I want you to open your mind and realize anything is possible. I don't care what your present situation is. There is a word called faith or belief. In fact, in the movies, they always ask a person, do you believe? Belief is, or faith, if you want to call it that, is very, very powerful. When someone feels or believes that they can do something, it is a turning point. And if they execute and follow through, they strengthen their faith. And really, it is all about what you believe. Wonder Woman is correct. It is not about what people deserve. It is about what you believe. Some people are so guarded about what they believe that they get into passionate arguments, and some people kill other people based on what they believe. See, it's what you believe. And now let's go into what you believe. So remember, there was this discourse, false information, that Joss Whedon would get director credit on Justice League. Then there was another article posted, false information, about the fact that Zack Synder would have a diminished role in the Justice League. Even though all evidence does not point to that. And then people would say, oh, well, he would be probably on another Warner Brothers film, but not on another DC film. Not in the DCEU. His role will diminish and diminish. Screen Rant. A gentleman named Stephen M. Colbert, or Colbert. I think this may be Stephen Colbert, who also does Stephen Colbert, his own TV show. Maybe it's him. But nonetheless, I like what Stephen Colbert had to say. Again, refuting such notions. And I want people to understand something. As I go through this Screen Rant article, and again, as I said before, I do go to Screen Rant a lot. And I do put out my videos. But as Stephen M. Colbert starts to go through this article, showing facts why Zack Synder is still involved with the DCEU and will always be involved with the DCEU. As he goes through these facts, I want you to understand something. The fight or the struggle in this world between light and darkness, good and evil, knowledge and ignorance, is what you believe. whether what you believe is true or not. Let's get to it. So, this article, let me just interject here. There's a beautiful portrait of Ben Affleck as the Batman. Okay? And of course, Batman News is where I got this from. And this is a recent portrait, but they got this off of one of Mattel's multiverse Batman figures. They got it off the box, okay? But still, they went on to say why they think Ben Affleck is the ultimate Batman and why he looks like the ultimate Batman. I wouldn't say he's the ultimate Batman. I mean, Michael Keaton gives him a run for his money, okay? Michael Keaton gives Ben Affleck a run for his money, but and sometimes Ben Affleck does look a little bit, strange in the costume sometimes. Not in live action, but, otherwise. But nonetheless, yes, I have to agree with them that Ben Affleck really does capture the essence of who Batman is, okay? I heard Grace Randolph say that, just a side note comment, that she found that Batman's ideals of wanting to represent Superman and the hope that Superman brings was outside of Batman's character because he usually has a rift with Superman. I would not necessarily agree with Grace Randolph. I understand where she's coming from. In the comics, if you look at Batman in the comics, he's always generally been adversarial to Superman. He's been friend with Superman, but he's still kind of somewhat adversarial. And they tend to make snide comments about one another. But having said so, if you really watch the animated series, Batman works in cohorts with Superman quite a lot. And he's not necessarily anti-Superman, okay? But in this case, the circumstances mitigate that Batman. You see, that's the difference between romanticism and naturalism. Naturalism says Batman has no choice but to behave this way with Superman. Romanticism says, under these set of circumstances, with Superman influencing Batman so much, Batman seeing the sacrifice of Superman, wouldn't Batman just logically want to represent what Superman represents? And that's why we got, for the first time on live action, a hopeful Batman. We've never seen Batman really hopeful. He's been hopeful before, don't get me wrong, in the comics and etc. But generally, Batman is a narcissistic, sarcastic kind of person, and his sort of way of looking at the world is not saying that men are essentially good. Instead, he says that there are men in this world who are essentially evil. He identifies the evil, right? Now we are seeing a hopeful Batman, but he's still Batman. Which means he's still narcissistic. He still sees the world in a sarcastic sort of way. So he's still trying to be preventative. He's still trying to jump the gun and stop the problem from manifesting itself before it comes up. Okay? But he's a little bit more hopeful. And if you listen to Jeff Johns constantly talks about these characters being hopeful, and this is what made him want to be superhero. And truly, when you're younger, you want to be a superhero because they encapsulate the things that you admire as a person and want to be, right? The values. So yes, Jeff Johns is 100% correct, and I'm backing Jeff Johns 100%. I don't believe, again, I didn't believe the rumors that Jeff Johns is against Zack Synder and trying to back. Why would he want to be against Zack Synder? Okay? Why would you be against a guy who started off the DCEU successfully, used you, you've moved up to this prominent status because of this guy, because if this guy didn't launch the universe, then you wouldn't be where you are. I mean, it doesn't make any sense, okay? And Jeff Johns knows the big picture. He understands what Zack Snyder is doing, as well as Charles Roven, John Berg, Patty Jenkins, what's his name? James Wan, Matt Reeves, the whole David Ayer, they all understand the big picture. They had to if they were going to direct a film. You understand what I'm saying? So all of these guys are in cahoots. I think David Ayer is going to do an excellent job on Gotham City Sirens. We're looking forward to it. David Ayer, remember, is a guy who develops characters. He's different to, say, a Patty Jenkins who focuses on one particular character and will really flush it out, which is different to Zack Snyder, who deals with concepts, but he uses characters, but the characters follow a certain sort of point of view or perspective that he sees and summarizes the universe as in consultation with guys like Christopher Nolan, Jeff Johns, David Goyer, Chris Terrio, etc., 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 himself being an avid comic book fan. You have to understand, The reason why Zack Snyder got credit for the story, just like how Christopher Nolan got credit for Superman, was because these guys put their input, heavy input, into these stories and how they're framed. Okay? Heavy input. Alright? And Patty Jenkins will tell you that. Now, Patty Jenkins has a lot of leeway. The thing about Warner Brothers I like is that they give their directors a lot of leeway. A lot of leeway to interpret, to sculpt, to shape. So if you look at Wonder Woman, it's different to Suicide Squad, which is different to Man of Steel and Batman v Superman. They're different approaches to films, but yet the general theme, because every film has a theme, and this is another thing about romanticism. Romanticism builds on themes. That's why the DCEU did not begin like how Marvel did. It didn't begin with the constituent parts assembling together to form the Justice League. Remember, the Avengers, they assemble. Right? Assembly means you have to have the individual parts. But the Justice League unites. Which means you may not know all the individual parts, but in uniting, in them working together, you get to know the individual parts. But it was critical that they had the foundation of the Justice League down pat, which is Wonder Woman, Batman, and Superman, which we saw in the prequel to the Justice League, which was Batman v Superman. And then we saw again in Wonder Woman, that's for Wonder Woman, and we saw also in Man of Steel for Superman. Okay? And we're going to find out more about this kind of Batman in Justice League. So we're going to get a little bit more flushed out with Batman, because this story is carried by Cyborg. Yes, it's Cyborg-centric, but there are principal characters who have to move around, which will be Batman, Wonder Woman, and we'll get a little bit of the Flash. Okay? The last guy who joins this league is obviously Aquaman. He's going to be the last dude to join. Alright? Clearly, we know this from the trailers. So, it's going to be very interesting how this storytelling is told. A lot of people, again, people go from what we call a naturalistic perspective. This should go this way. No, it doesn't, says a romantic. It doesn't have to go this way. And we can question certain things about how characters are. And if we have a full understanding of the character, we can depart. That's why Jeff Johns' series, with his Rebirth series that he launched off so successfully, it worked because there were controversial things in there. But Jeff Johns felt, because he knew the characters so very well, that he could take that risk because he felt that that was a natural thing to do for him. Again, a romantic way of looking at things. Okay? So I just wanted to go there before we go into the Justice League. So, yeah. Screen Rant said that, what is the input Zack Snyder has on the Justice League final cut? Well, first of all, Zack Snyder's the guy that has gotten the DCEU running really, really well. Now, there were rumors. I just want to recap them first. Due to the nature of news surrounding the DCEU, the negativity that tends to be leveled at Snyder's contributions and the fact that he's been replaced by Joss Whedon, very much Snyder's mirror image in many respects, because they think that Whedon is sort of like, he's kind of like the sort of diametric opposite to Zack Snyder, in that he's had very much success with the Avengers movies. He's also been someone's more on the comic side of things, it seems. Buffy the Vampire Slayer was a bit more of a comic relief mixed with adventure. So, but it was dark still, but it was more light, right? Light dark. And so he's kind of the counter to Zack Snyder, you would think. Right? That's what appearances are, but appearances are very deceiving. This is what I would say. Anyway, it raised the question of whether or not Warner Brothers is using Zack Snyder's exit to pivot the entire universe away from the vision he helped conceive to something more in line with Marvel, a universe Whedon also helped build. This is the perception. I mean, it makes sense. Repeated rumors over the true extent of reshoots only fanned the flames, and Joss Whedon bringing in Danny Elfman to replace Junkie XL, the composer Snyder had selected for the project, seemed to be clear writing on the wall. Right? Now, a new report from Mashable, who's doesn't really matter then, purports that Zack Snyder's role in the DCU won't be ramping back up after Justice League, and his future involvement with the franchise is going to be significantly diminished, seemingly confirming, at least for some, that Snyder's influence on Justice League has been totally usurped as Jeff Johns and Joss Whedon take the franchise in a fresh direction free of Snyder's polarizing aesthetic. But that couldn't be further from the truth. And let's get into it now. Snyder's Directors Guild rights. Okay? So they did a little homework, and the facts show this. Warner Brothers cannot limit Snyder's involvement. While it's not a typical topic of conversation in the film community, the recent firing of Lord and Miller from Han Solo's Star Wars spin-off movie and Snyder's decision to step down from the Justice League have both led to lots of recent discussion over the creative rights of directors per the Directors Guild of America. You can view the full rights of director here, but we have included some relevant points below. If you have directed 100% of the scheduled principal photography, you have the right to direct any additional scenes and retakes, subject only to your availability. If unavailable, you must be allowed to consult with the person who directs this photography. That's the first rule. Second, the producer must allow you to be present at all times, to be consulted throughout the entire post-production period. You must have a reasonable opportunity to discuss the last version of the film before negative cutting or dubbing, whichever is first. Remember, Warner Brothers had said this, right? They said, Zack Snyder has to okay this film. He has to. Alright? Thirdly, the director must be responsible for the presentation of his or her cut of the motion picture, herein referred as a director's cut, and it is understood that his or her assignment is not complete until he or she has presented the director's cut to the employer, subject to the terms and conditions of his BA, as soon as possible within the time frame hereinafter provided for, subject to the paragraph 7505G. No one other than the director may supervise the editing of the first cut of the film following completion of the editor's assembly. If the director refuses to, or due to incapacity cannot supervise the first cut, the employer must assign another person to edit the film. Within 1 day following such an assignment, the employer shall send the guild written notice thereof. So this is what Joss Whedon is doing. He is responsible for post-production. He is responsible for the final cut. Now, Zack Snyder already did a cut, but he showed it to his friends, right? That was a rough cut. But generally speaking, the director does that. Now, I want to continue onwards here. So it's clear that Warner Brothers was absolutely, Tommy Emmerich was absolutely, he was absolutely correct when he said Zack Snyder has to have the last say on this Justice League movie. It's just what it is. Here's the next thing. The producer may not use the company's scheduling authority or post-production locale to undermine your creative rights. That means Zack Snyder gets credit for the directing. Period. Alright, let's keep this moving. In the case of Lord and Miller, they were replaced with 3 weeks of shooting to go, meaning they didn't complete the prerequisite 100% principal photography mentioned so above. So the situation with Han Solo is completely different from Justice League, since Zack Snyder did complete 100% of principal photography. As such, there are several things he's entitled to above. To summarize in plain English, Zack Snyder has the rights to consultation with Joss Whedon over reshoots, post-production creative rights, a director's cut, and supervision of editing. These rights cannot be impeded or impaired in any way. So despite Snyder opting to have Joss Whedon step in to complete additional photography, he has not compromised any of those guaranteed rights, since he's completed 100% of principal photography prior to taking time off. For all intents and purposes, at least on paper, Zack Snyder still has just as much control over Justice League as he ever had, and can exercise it whenever he wants. The question is whether or not that's a power he intends to wield, which he won't. Why will he not intend to wield this power? He will not intend to wield this power because he has given Joss Whedon full creative control over what he does. Zack Snyder has stepped away. You've noticed he's stepped away from advertising in Justice League and is focused on his family. Even though he has these rights and so on, and the final cut will have to pass to him, and he will have to he'll have to like what Joss Whedon does or not, I can guarantee you this. Zack Snyder has full confidence in Joss Whedon and what he's doing. And that's why Joss Whedon removed Junkie XL from the project. He said, "Oh, Junkie, you don't have to come back. You don't have to visit here now. I'm going to use Danny Elfman if you have other things to do. If you want to stick around, fine, but I'm putting Danny Elfman in charge of the musical score for now, because that's a guy I know he can do stuff, and I know what I want to do from here on in. But thanks for all your contributions. You still get credit for the music, but we step it up in the next direction," right? Because he knew what needed to be. He already had a good idea. Because he was working with Zack, he had a good idea of where Zack wanted to go, and he had a good idea of how he could embellish that, because that's what Joss Whedon's there to do, embellish what Zack's done. He's not there to recreate the wheel, okay? And there are not extensive reshoots, okay? Availability of actors is a different story, but they're not extensive reshoots like they've been publishing. So this is the truth, folks. You're getting it from Screen Rant, and they're using sources which are factual, facts. That's something that these gossip sites do not have. And when I start to confront the facts, they don't match up. Okay, guys? let's keep it going. Let's keep it going because I love this article by Stephen Colbert. I think it's Stephen Colbert. I would be surprised. All right, let's keep it going. Does Zack Snyder still want to be involved? Initially, the question of Zack Snyder's desire to remain involved seems to be answerable with a simple no, seeing as he is the one that made the decision to step away in the first place. However, Mashable's report on his future with the DC included a statement from Toby Emmerich, Warner Brothers president and chief content officer. Toby Emmerich has replaced another guy who was the chief guy in Warner Brothers. Okay, this is what Toby Emmerich had to say. The Snyders remain an important part of the Warner Brothers family and are actively involved in several upcoming DC pictures. Let me just make it abundantly clear. You can't get clearer than this. DC Pictures. Do you know what DC means? The DC means Detective Comics. This is not just Warner Brother Pictures. It's not just, no. It's DC Pictures. You know what DC means? DCEU. Okay? It's the DC Extended Universe he's talking about. He didn't say DC Extended Universe Pictures, but they're only one DC in movies right now, and that's the DCEU. So they're involved in several upcoming DC. You know what that is? They're involved in Aquaman. They're involved in whatever comes after Aquaman, and so on. Okay? Yes, they won't be directors, obviously. They'll be producers. But the point is, they're involved. And let me tell you why they're involved. You see all of the CGI. You see all of the action scenes. You see all of the wardrobe and costuming. Guess who's been funding or arranging for all those things to happen so that they can help all these directors? Zack Snyder. Okay? He's even involved in the story. He's all up in the DCEU, man, folks. So if you like Wonder Brothers, guess what? Guess who was behind Wonder Woman? Zack Snyder. Right? And Christopher Nolan has a vested interest in the DCEU succeeding as well. Because Christopher Nolan, I keep on saying this over and over for people. Christopher Nolan was the guy that recommended Zack Snyder, along with David Goyer. Okay? So Christopher Nolan is not one of them dudes who will cut down the DCEU. That's why Christopher Nolan said about Wonder Woman and about all the DCEU movies, he's always acutely interested in it. He's not going to do comic book movies ever again. But he put a guy who has a deep understanding of comic book lore, especially DC, to do it. If you look at what Jeff Johns is doing in Rebirth, it follows along the lines of what Zack Snyder has been doing in the movies. But yet, it also feels a little bit like the CW. Because guess who's involved in both? Jeff Johns. Okay, guys? So don't be hating on any one of these guys because they all are working together. In fact, when I saw James Gunn jump out of there and started congratulating Patty Jenkins on Wonder Woman, it dawned on me, and Kevin Feige, it dawned on me, it's a community of people who actually are happy for one another. And they've actually worked together on different things. Jeff Johns worked together with Kevin Feige. They actually were both under Richard Donner. Okay, so it's a community out there, and yeah, Zack gets a lot of flack, and there's some people who hate on Zack in the community because I don't know if it's jealousy or if it's just the way how Zack does things they don't like, but it's successful, whereas what they would think would be successful didn't work out because Superman Returns was a flop. And people have made all kinds of excuses. The budget was too big and so on. Bryan Singer made a classic. No, Bryan Singer made something that people didn't want to see anymore. And they hadn't want to see it since the 80s. Okay? Superman had been, the two last Superman movies of the 80s were flops. They were box office flops. People had gotten tired of that sort of storytelling of Superman. And Superman Returns simply showed that to be true. When they departed from that kind of Superman, we had Smallville, and I was a big fan of Smallville. This was the kind of Superman people were looking for. And Zack Snyder built off of Smallville and then took the narrative and challenged people to understand why Superman was opposed to killing people. Okay? And he did it through what would be the most ironic thing? Killing a Kryptonian like himself, which he did not want to do. So, and it makes logical sense. You see, the thing about romantic realism is it makes logical sense. But if you feel that things have to be this way and you can't release yourself from that and look at it as if it's a realistic situation and somebody's in a certain situation, you are going to always say, well, why didn't he just fly away and let Zod chase him down? Well, if he flew away, guess what Zod would do? Zod wouldn't follow him. It wouldn't be like Christopher Reeve's Richard Donner's Superman 2. No, Zod wouldn't follow him. Zod would just go back to Earth and kill a whole bunch of people. Feora L said it. Every human you save, we will kill 1,000,000 more. Holding Superman hostage. He was in a situation where it was kill or be killed. Zod said it himself. He said, this fight ends one way. Either you die or I do. Okay? He said it. When Superman said, no, stop, don't do this, Zod said, never. Okay? Think about it now. Think about it now. So, this was a Zod that wasn't like the other Zod, which was kneel before Zod. This wasn't that Zod. That Zod didn't really have much more motivation than to have the whole world under him. This Zod wanted to terraform the world into Krypton to save his people. This Zod was desperate to save his people. Because that's all he knew. And then he was genetically engineered to do that. And when Superman took that away from him, he was hell-bent on revenge. That was all that was in Zod's mind. And the only way he knew was he said, these humans that you have adopted, I will take them from you one by one. Did you hear him say that? This was a different motivated Zod to the Zod that faced Kal-El back in 1980, 81 in Superman 2. It's a different motivation. So that a lot of these people who talk about Superman, they don't know that Superman killed Zod multiple times in the comics and otherwise, right? Superman killed Doomsday. Nobody said anything about Superman killing Doomsday. No, they were just appalled that Superman had to die. It was too early for Superman to die. No, there's never too early to die. It's never too early to die. Death doesn't come when you want it. Oh, we're ready for death now. It never comes that way. You always want more time. So if you're really being realistic, that's why I said it's romantic realism. If you're really talking about what should naturally occur or what would normally occur, you would know that Superman's death was timely. But the visceral hate was because of the romantic way Zack Synder approached the film. He already had an ideology in his mind. Some people would say he was preaching to me and the film was no fun. It should have jokes. Jokes. No, man. Who said that superhero movies need to be just popcorn and candy and you laughing and a lot of action? Who said that it had to be that way? We've seen Blade. Blade wasn't funny. There were no jokes. We have seen The Dark Knight. Batman Begins. The Dark Knight Rises. There were no jokes. It wasn't funny. Alright? If you have ever watched Unbreakable, it ain't funny. There ain't no jokes. Okay? These are all superhero movies. But I have to admit, Unbreakable is more on the lines of naturalism. So basically the director not commenting at all. He's just passively observing these characters as they move along. The Dark Knight was romantic, but it got away with it. Because people bought into the connection between Batman, how he became the Batman, etc. Okay? My point being this. That what Zack Synder has done in this particular community, in this particular world, yes, he has had films where the advertising is pointed to one thing, and then when you see the movies, something totally different. I can understand that. People went in to see Batman v Superman a kick-up. People went in to see Watchmen and see fighting and drama. People went into Sucker Punch thinking it was some kind of sort of role-playing sexual kind of thing with a lot of action and anime. I understand. That's not what Zack Snyder does. He's a deeper guy than that. Okay? This Justice League movie, I'm guaranteeing you this Justice League movie will offend you. It will challenge you. Get ready to be challenged. Get ready to be offended. You will be. But the difference is with this Justice League movie and Batman v Superman and Man of Steel is that Joss Whedon is the guy polishing up this movie. Okay? And Danny Elfman. And what's so powerful about that is Whedon is the guy responsible for starting the MCU properly. Elfman is the guy that changed the whole game when Batman was brought in. So it's kind of fitting that these guys would actually be involved in the Justice League movie in some very pivotal roles in the Justice League movie. Okay? Joss Whedon knows his task is pretty difficult because he has to walk that fine line that Patty Jenkins did where you're offending the audience, but at the same time, you're also inspiring them. So the nice thing about this Justice League movie is there is going to be lots of stakes. It's going to be very trepidatious. And people are going to get offended a couple times in this movie because things that they expect to happen will not happen. Okay? That's Zack Snyder. It's going to make you think, reflect on the characters. But the other thing that's going to be cool about this movie that you're going to really enjoy is the fact that Whedon is going to finesse the daylights out of this thing, like how Patty Jenkins did. He gonna finesse it like crazy. You see what I'm talking about. And Danny Elfman is so skillful. I'm telling you, Whedon and Elfman was involved in that recent Justice League trailer, and I haven't heard a person really say anything substantially negative about that trailer. And that trailer took it to the whole other level. I don't know how they're going to beat that. And now I'm starting to second guess Justice League being a better movie than Batman v Superman. I don't know if it's possible because Batman v Superman had so much plot and so much story to it and just so much nuance. But I don't know. You're in for a treat though, guys. You're going to go through a spectrum of emotions, but in a much more controlled way. Much more controlled than Batman v Superman. I think Whedon's going to take his time. He's going to order the story in a way that you'll take your time to be able to be ready for the different sort of impacts. So it won't be just shock after shock after shock. No, it'll be a shock and then you'll be enjoying yourself again and you get another shock. But he'll let you recoup, process it, and then you'll get another shock. I think that's how it will go. So it'll be a little bit different to the fast-paced Batman v Superman. You're swimming. If you fall behind, you're swimming in that story, and you don't know what's going on. It's not going to be like that. So it'll be more like the Patty Jenkins film. It'll be more like Wonder Woman. And Zack Snyder said it was going to be more linear. But I think the humor is going to kind of offset some of that bitter aftertaste you're going to have at certain points in the movie. Because some people are going to die, and they're going to be characters you really like. I mean, Wonder Woman really bruised me, man, when it comes to that. Anyway, so I'm saying, my point anyway is this. That the president, Tommy Emmerich, of Warner Brothers Productions, said that Zack Snyder is still actively involved in several upcoming DC projects, and they continue their creative input on Justice League. Alright? So, just in case you do not get that, legally, and also what Tommy Emmerich has been saying, what Jeff Johns has been saying, what the Justice League members have been saying. You notice that Ray Fisher, he got "I love Zack Snyder" on his shirt, right? Get it straight, folks. Zack Snyder may be underappreciated in open circles of the media, especially, and there are people with agendas to just try and get rid of Zack Snyder for reasons unknown to me. I don't understand. Why would he want to get rid of Zack Snyder? The guy has all the infrastructure for the DCEU set up. They've been able to master certain projects and be able to lend out and basically contract out their people to keep the the DCEU working really nice and smooth. You know, it's not just Zack Snyder. It's not just what you think. Cruel Films Production, and Atlas Entertainment. They're taking on a lot of stuff, and they're networked with a number of companies that come in to give you what you need for your film as a director. So you kind of come in with some infrastructure already there for you to just use and manipulate. And if you want to import other new things and new ideas, go for it. Knock yourself out. You know, there ain't no leash on Joss Whedon. You know, Joss Whedon can do whatever he wants to do. There's no leash on Joss Whedon. That's what you got to understand. Joss Whedon will do whatever it takes to get this story crystallized and the best possible story on screen. That's just, and Joss Whedon knows this, and so he's just slaving. That's why he brought on board Danny Elfman. Okay, and I don't question the dude no more. I'm not questioning Joss Whedon. Joss Whedon can do no wrong with me, because I know he knows what he needs to do. You see? And so that's why I just wanted to share this video. This is confirmation from Stephen Colbert. You can always read the article in its entirety. There's a lot more. Going on. Zack Snyder is absolutely hands off from this movie right now, in terms of his direct micromanaging involvement or even his aid. But do understand, Joss Whedon would consult with him on certain things, or probably has consulted with him on certain things already, as to get the exact feel so that Joss Whedon can do what he wants to do, so that the tone of the movie is the same. It's supposed to feel seamless. It's not supposed to feel dual-toned. That was my fear, that Joss Whedon would come on board and it would be a different tone to the movie. No, it's definitely going to be Zack Snyder still. But even in tone, it might be Zack Snyder. Believe you me, you're going to feel Joss Whedon up in there. You're already feeling it. You're feeling Jeff Johns and Joss Whedon there, with the color palettes and with the music and with the pacing of the trailers. And the transitions are a little bit more fluent. Zack Snyder has more, as I said before, he's more kind of Quentin Tarantino. He's got a kind of rough feel to him in all his movies. But you can feel that polish coming in, and that's Joss Whedon, Danny Elfman, Jeff Johns, you know, putting in a little bit more say, because remember, it's kind of supposed to match up with the comics somewhat. So you get this kind of nostalgic feel all the time. So they're putting a certain shine, a certain polish on Zack's work, enhancing the work. That's what they're doing. And Zack knows this. And he's absolutely okay with it. Otherwise, you wouldn't see the trailers come out. You wouldn't see. And Zack is hell-bent on it coming out November 17th. So, you know, it's going to happen. All right? They're going to get it done. And they're going to get it done. They're going to get it done right, man. When you see... Because the next thing that's very important for people to understand is there's a fan base that bought into the DCU because of Zack Snyder. Okay? And these people really believe in what Zack is doing because he's doing something different. And I know Jeff Johns identifies with that, because that's what... When we think of comic books, that's what we think of. Comic books are deeper than just action and jokes and sequences. And as much as I like Justice League, the animated series, and I like Batman, the animated series, and I like some of the animated movies I've seen, we've seen the Justice League where people have died and they got killed, Justice League War, and Superman's killed people in there. So, you know, when people say that Batman doesn't kill or Superman doesn't kill, they obviously haven't watched some of those animated movies. You know, Superman killed Brainiac. Okay? Superman... you know, he killed a number of characters, man. So, I don't know what you guys talking about. You know what I'm saying? Superman does kill. Batman does kill. But it doesn't mean that they're killers. When you think of the Punisher, the Punisher really messes up people. He kills almost everyone, right? There ain't nobody remaining standing around the Punisher. When the Punisher coming after you, he coming to kill you, right? Batman's not like that. Batman ain't coming after you to kill you. His desire, his intent is not to kill you. Okay, except for with Superman, he was going to kill Superman. No doubt about that. And Batman v Superman, he was going to kill him. I was like creeped out. Okay, but other than that, Batman is not a guy who kills. He wants to scare you. He wants you to stop crime. That is his principal objective. That's why he took on the form of a bat. And he moves in the night. Punisher kill you in the day and the night. Punisher don't care. He gonna kill you. If he coming after you, it's over. He gonna kill you. Okay? Batman's not like that. But if in the heat of battle you die, well, too bad. Okay? And sometimes he does have the intent of stopping you by killing you. No doubt about it. Even though you may not die. You know, he blow up something or whatever. Something blows up and you manage to escape out of there and live. Okay? It's not like Batman doesn't. He's not. He's a human being. You understand what I'm saying? But he didn't. His intention most of the time is not to kill people. Alright? But if he has to kill, he will kill. Of course. And that's Batman. So I think a lot of people, Christopher Nolan come out, Batman never said in the comics that he had a rule of no killing and no guns. Nowhere in the comics you'll find that. Batman doesn't say no guns, no killing. No, that's a Christopher Nolan movie. You saw that and spoiled you rotten. Nowhere in the comics does Batman say that. Yeah, Batman will break a gun. He did it in The Dark Knight, The Dark Knight Returns. Graphic novel by Frank Miller. He break guns, and he said, you know, we not thugs like that, you know. But he's the one that used the big semi-automatic Uzi and shoot the guy in his head and took the baby. So it's not like, I'm not saying he's a hypocrite. I'm just saying Batman will use a gun, but he don't carry guns on him. He does carry guns on his tanks and stuff, and he saw him shoot guns at the people and so on, blow up people and stuff. But generally speaking, Batman doesn't carry guns on him. Right? Even though on occasion he does carry a gun, if it's a superpowered being, you're going to use a gun. You're going to use the Omega Beam. You're going to use whatever you got to use on you to take you down. Okay? But if he doesn't have to kill you, he's not going to kill you. Alright? That's not Batman. Batman ain't going to just kill. He's not the Punisher. So the people who saying that Batman is like the Punisher, oh look, he's being like the Punisher in this movie. No, he's not. No, he's not. No, he's not. If you're being real, he's not. And it's not like Batman doesn't use guns. He can use guns. He can shoot guns. He don't carry guns on him, generally speaking. Alright? He doesn't carry guns on his person, that is. He carries batarangs. Right? He carries a grappling gun. Right? That's what Batman carries. But don't get it twisted. It's not that Batman can't use guns. It's not that Batman didn't carry guns ever in his lore. Of course Batman carried guns. That's how he started out. He started out carrying guns. Okay? He started out snapping people's necks and killing people and tossing them down into vats of chemicals and throwing garbage on them and throwing them down from buildings and all kinds of crap. Okay? That's how Batman started. Okay? Then they made him less violent, but he was still killing every now and then. Okay? But what they like to do in Batman movies is, or Batman comics, is sometimes they have you question mark whether that person's dead or alive. Yeah, but Batman ends up killing a lot of people all the time. Alright? If you're really paying attention. Okay? So, I'm just saying, a lot of times, I watch these things. I know you guys are probably wondering how long this video is going to be, but it's going up. I watch it how people say certain things, but they're being tongue-in-cheek because Zack Synder said his Batman was closest to the depiction of Batman. Now people are saying, yes, that's Batman is closer to the depiction of Batman. But before that, they were saying, oh, Batman doesn't kill, and this live-action Batman is not as good as the Dark Knight because the Dark Knight don't kill. You know, but every single iteration of Batman, I'm talking about the Jokey Schumacher Batman and Robin Batman has killed. Every last one. On live action, they've all killed. Anybody say, oh, that's not true, they lie. Okay? And these are the facts. See, that's the problem. I go with facts. I don't go with what people say. That's why I said it's what you believe in the beginning. It's what you believe. Alright? If the MCU wasn't around, we wouldn't have this discussion. But there are different styles of making film, and you have to be able to understand. I heard people say it's style over substance. There's no way Zack Snyder's Batman v Superman or Man of Steel are style over substance. There's no way. And at least me and John Campion can agree on one thing. Man of Steel is a hell of a movie. I don't rate it as high as he does. He rates it over Batman v Superman, which I'll never do. like Dave the Film Junkie and like my boy Tyron Magnus, I agree that the order to the DCU films right now are Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, The Ultimate Cut, then comes Man of Steel, and then barely, just less than Man of Steel, very barely, is Wonder Woman. Okay? And then Suicide Squad. And it's the only reason Suicide Squad's that low. I like the characters. It's just the story's rather, simple. And as like I said before, it's like Captain America: Civil War. It's a very simple plot that sometimes is somewhat nonsensical. I find it more grounded than that movie. I also find it more grounded than Captain America: The Winter Soldier. However, Suicide Squad is not a better movie than Captain America: The First Avenger. No way. No way. Neither is a better movie than the very first Spider-Man movie. No way. Alright, I always say, and I still will continue, Tobey Maguire, I think is his name, did an excellent job with Spider-Man. And I don't think, this current version of Spider-Man is a better Spider-Man than that, but the story? No way. There's a reason why that is right now in North American box office the highest grossing superhero original film, and puts Spider-Man on the map. Okay? Michael Keaton's Batman is a hell of a Batman. He's a legend. Michael Keaton's a legend. Okay? Because of that movie. Okay? And it's just what it is. When it comes to Superman, people talk about Christopher Reeves all the time, and it's true. He's the guy that put superhero movies on the map, period. You can't take that from him. You know what I'm saying? He's the king. Like Michael Keaton's the king. But we got new people, we got new players in town. We got Ben Affleck, we got Henry Cavill. We got new players in town with a different kind of take on the characters. Same character, but just different take on it because of the world they exist in. And it's just, it's just incredible. It's incredible. So, I'm just saying, if you really want to go there, the inconsistency on Zack Synder because of the hate for Zack Synder is unmerited. It's unmerited, especially with people in the media. And if they ask themselves, if they're being honest with themselves, it's that Zack Synder surprises them with the usual tropes instead of the usual tropes that they're used to, and then the fact that the MCU is around and they're used to these simpleton ways of looking at things. No disrespect to the MCU, but they basically are straight cut, and they usually go by the naturalistic mean. They don't go by romanticism. And so the takes you get are typical tropes. And so the typical tropes is not a problem. That's why Deadpool came and he mocked all those typical tropes and made people think about that. But it doesn't appeal to me. Deadpool doesn't appeal to me because he himself is a typical trope. You see what I'm saying? He himself is the typical trope. So he's actually making fun of his own self at the same time. So I'm really not entertained by Deadpool. I understand what he is. I understand he's kind of like a version of Spider-Man, kind of like a version of Wolverine. I understand, I get it, but I'm not really interested in Deadpool, and I just never was. Doesn't mean that the movie wasn't a good movie. You understand what I'm saying? So, I just wanted to make this long little rant here, and I use scripture to begin with, which ties in with this whole thing, as you can clearly see. And I want you guys to think about the fact that the MCU, Marvel, the DCEU, the MonsterVerse is coming. These are all great things for us as comic book fans. And when good things are happening, instead of moving on the side of being snarky, pessimistic, gluttonous, and always looking for something to entertain you, why not have these things be inspiration for you to entertain others? There's a scripture that says, some people entertain angels unawares. If you have a caring, loving heart, these films will reach out to you. And at the bottom of all of these comic book movies is always something soft and something true that their directors are trying to get across to you. And I hope that that is never, ever misunderstood. Alright? I don't care if it's even the Michael Bay film that came out, the Transformers film. These directors are trying to give you something under all of that Even if it's a small little bit you get, take it and use it for others. All right? And I know you guys have a great one.